These mean greedy men, they don't know when to stop. Yeah, these mean greedy men, they don't know when to stop. They take the bread from the table and still reach for the top.
Hi there, I'm an avatar speaking to you on behalf of usdemocracy.org. Those words up there reflect what a lot of us are probably thinking right now, though maybe spelled differently. Some of us, especially the older folks, were taught not to use four-letter words in public. So in this video, we'll use the word fork instead of, well, you know the one. Come to think of it, there is another meaning for this phrase which seems appropriate. We're a community of independent thinkers who believe America can and must change course. Today, the wealthy and big corporations wield outsized influence in Washington, while millions of Americans are left behind. This video traces the choices made 45 years ago that set us on this path, and why it's time to chart a better one. Sounds like a storm's brewing over there in Trickle-down. Let's briefly discuss the structural and policy shifts since 1981 that have increased the ability of wealthy individuals and corporations to influence elected officials. The top 8 are the ones shown to my left. In the interest of time, I will cover the top 4 as they have had the greatest impact. Campaign finance deregulation has certainly had a significant influence. Court rulings like Citizens United removed limits on outside spending, giving wealthy donors and corporations unprecedented sway over elections. That sway is certainly in evidence by the tax policy shifts since 1981. The repeated cuts in top income, capital gains, and corporate tax rates have concentrated wealth at the top, fueling elite power and damaging economic outcomes for the middle class. Deregulation enabled Wall Street to dominate the economy, amplifying speculative finance and political leverage for big banks. The 401k laws supercharged financialization by funneling retirement savings into Wall Street. Conservative courts expanded corporate rights and curtailed campaign finance limits, shifting structural power toward the wealthy. Let's look at how tax rates have been reduced for the mega wealthy since 1950. This graph shows the effective tax rates for different income groups for the years 1950, 1980, and 2025. The effective tax rate is the total of all taxes paid, including income tax, sales tax, property tax, etc. I created this chart with the assistance of ChatGPT 4o. Numerous citations can be provided if someone wants to dispute these numbers. In 1950, the effective tax rate on the top 0.1% was about 55%. In 1980, the rate on the top 0.1% had been reduced to about 38%. This was a big reduction, but they still paid more taxes than the lower income groups. Now let's look at the estimated rate for the top 0.1% in 2025. Now they are actually paying a lower percentage than the upper middle income people, and are pretty close to the level of the middle income people. That does not seem very fair, does it? Let's look at how the last 45 years of trickle-down economics has affected income inequality in the U.S. Prices increased by a cumulative price increase of 205% from 1980 to 2018. In this graph, we can see how much more the incomes of rich people grew in that period versus how little the incomes of the rest of us grew. Most normal incomes did not even keep pace with inflation, while the rich people's incomes outpaced inflation by up to 350%. The corresponding numbers for 2025 would be even worse. The GINI index is a tool used for measuring income inequality. In 1980 it was below 35 in the U.S. Since then it has grown to almost 42. This graphic shows how our income inequality compares to the rest of the world. Wow, good going, Washington. You have gotten us right up there with countries in South America and Africa. Okay, now let's look at why our national debt has gotten to be so large. This graph shows our national debt as a percentage of our gross domestic product since the founding of our country. Doing it this way cancels out the effects of inflation. We can see that there are two big peaks, one just after World War II and now. The peak after World War II is perfectly understandable. We had just fought a major war and recovered from a depression. We managed to bring the debt down to a reasonable level during the 20-year period from the late 1940s to the late 1960s. Let's take a look at how other areas of the economy did in that period. The top tax rate was 91% from 1950 to 1964. It decreased to 70% from 1965 until 1981. Despite the high tax rates on the wealthy, that period has been called the golden age of American capitalism. During that period, 41,000 miles of interstate and other highways were built, there was a housing boom aided by VA loans, NASA was created and put a man on the moon, and Medicare and Medicaid were started. The profit margins of businesses were high, and the stock market increased fourfold. Workers shared in the economic gains in that period, unlike after 1981. The middle class was prosperous, and many single-income families could afford to purchase homes. I wonder why the current administration never brings these facts up. If they really wanted to make America great again, wouldn't they try to emulate that period in our history? Since the early 80s, the national debt has increased again to a level above what it was after World War II. The question is, why? The main problem has been the trickle-down economics plan initiated by President Reagan in 1981. Trickle-down economics benefits the wealthy and businesses with the idea that benefits eventually trickle down to the lower classes. As we can see, this economics plan has absolutely failed, causing not only our national debt crisis, but leading to a large increase in income inequality as discussed earlier. The projected deficit for 2025 is $1.7 trillion. Here are the options for raising additional revenue that the current administration is using or that are under discussion. Tariffs have proven to lead to problems in the past, as evidenced by the Smoot-Hawley tariffs enacted in 1930. Those tariffs pushed the country further into the Depression and ended up having more negative effects than positive. Did no one in the administration consider this past experience with tariffs? The spending cuts included in the Big Ugly Bill, plus the ones from the administration, could cut about $300 billion when considered over a full year. These cuts have had a terrible effect on some people, like those who depend on Medicaid. The dollar devaluation plan being considered poses a substantial risk of high inflation, so I'm really hoping that does not happen. The VAT tax has been discussed in some circles, but the political fallout from that could be substantial. Even so, do not be surprised if it comes up again after the 2026 elections, assuming the GOP retains control of Congress. Even with all of these options, where most of the pain is on the middle class, the result is still below the current deficit projections for 2025. Even the maximum estimated total only covers about 50% of the deficit. Now let's compare that with increasing taxes on the wealthy and corporations. The amount of additional revenue from increasing taxes on the upper 1% is based upon raising the maximum marginal level to either 70% or 91%. The wide range of the estimate is due to considering historical data versus a theoretical maximum where many tax loopholes are closed. Many wealthy people are able to shield their incomes by taking advantage of the lower rates on capital gains. To avoid that loss of revenue, we would need to make capital gains taxes progressive. The additional revenue from that change could also be quite high as indicated. In 1950, the statutory U.S. corporate tax rate was initially 42% for income over $25,000, but was raised to 45% later on. In 1970, the corporate tax rate was 49.2% for all taxable income over $25,000. Even the lowest estimate from the total additional revenue from these options is higher than the ones the current administration has considered. At the higher end, the deficit would be fully covered with money left over. Let's break down the comparison between the administration's options and raising taxes on the wealthy and corporations. When you put them side by side, the difference is clear. Raising taxes on the wealthy and big corporations have a far greater impact. History shows us this works. Our country was strongest when the middle class was thriving during the golden age of capitalism from the 1950s through the 1970s. Back then, everyday families shared in the nation's prosperity. But over the last 45 years, the gains have gone almost entirely to the wealthy, while everyone else has been left behind. We have additional benefits from increasing taxes on the wealthy. The budget cuts from the Big Ugly Bill could be restored, with the very harmful effects from the Medicaid cuts nullified. We could get rid of most tariffs, or what they really are, a hidden sales tax that affects the middle class more than the wealthy. We could even put some of that money towards shoring up Social Security. This option is, of course, the fork the billionaires option. On a more serious note, let's talk about President Dwight Eisenhower. He served from 1953 to 1961, but before that he was Supreme Commander of the Allied forces in Europe, leading the fight against fascism in Germany and Italy. During his presidency, the top marginal tax rate was 91%, and let's not forget, he was a Republican. Eisenhower was a true war hero, a leader the American people could trust to tell the truth and do what was right for the country. He came from humble beginnings and worked his way up through the ranks to become a five-star general. That tells you everything about his intelligence, discipline, and character. We could sure use more leaders like him today, honest, steady, and guided by a sense of duty rather than personal gain. So, how do we start turning this around? It comes down to these three key steps. Let's walk through them together. Number 1. We must get rid of the corrupt politicians. The Republican Party today is dominated by billionaires, right-wing media, and extremists. But let's be honest, the media and the extremists are really just tools. They're being funded and directed by billionaires to distract you from the party's failures. How? By stirring up division, fueling anger, pointing fingers, spreading misinformation, creating culture wars, and repeating outright lies. And let's be honest, some Democrats also take billionaire money. That has to stop. Either they commit to representing the people, or we replace them. One clear solution is to elect candidates who pledge to serve their constituents. Not a party, not a president, not wealthy donors, not anyone else. Given all the gridlock and dysfunction we see today, maybe it's time to think seriously about moving beyond political parties altogether. We'll dive into that in a future video. Number 2. In a true democracy, one person gets one vote. If elections were like they should be, every citizen's vote would carry equal weight. But today, billionaires like Elon Musk hold far too much political influence. We need to overhaul our campaign finance and election laws so the ultra-rich can never again buy control of our government. Part of that means restoring and strengthening the fairness doctrine and undoing the rules that opened the floodgates to big money in politics. Number 3. Billionaires must be made to pay their fair share. Our nation was at its strongest when the middle class was thriving in the golden age of capitalism from the 1950s through the 1970s. Back then, broad prosperity lifted the entire economy. But the last 45 years of so-called trickle-down economics have done the opposite. Billionaires have grown richer while average Americans have fallen behind. Their greed and lust for power have damaged our country, not strengthened it. It's time for them to contribute fairly so we can rebuild a prosperous middle class. Let's be honest. There are a lot of reasons our national debt exploded over the last 45 years. We've had the 9/11 attacks, years of war, the 2008 crash and bailouts, and then the pandemic. But the single biggest driver has been the steady reduction in taxes paid by the wealthy and large corporations. That continued loss of revenue, combined with rising expenditures, represents financial mismanagement on a national scale. Let's not forget the sharp rise in income inequality over the past 45 years. It's yet another sign of how policies during this time have favored the wealthy and large corporations. But assigning blame won't solve anything. It's like a family that's maxed out their credit cards. Before we buy anything else, we've got to pay it down or risk bankruptcy. Here's what history and simple math tell us. The fastest way to fix this is to restore tax rates on the wealthy and big corporations, back to what they were in 1980, or better yet, the 1950s. That's when America was strong, the middle class was growing, and the national debt was brought back down to a manageable level. Sure, the wealthy will push back. But they might want to remember what history shows happens when income inequality gets too big. It doesn't end well for anybody. To make this happen, we've got to clean up political corruption and bring our country back to being a true democratic republic. Our government is supposed to be of the people, by the people, and for the people, not by the billionaires and for the billionaires. In future videos, we'll look at how smart tax laws could actually grow more American jobs than tariffs ever could. And we'll talk about the long overdue idea of national ballot initiatives to break the political gridlock. We'll also take a hard look at how China rebuilt its economy over the last 50 years and what we can learn from their playbook. Thanks for watching. There's some fun stuff coming up if you'd like to stick around and watch.
I am so greedy, greedy, greedy. The suckers believe everything we say. Fire hose up, baby.
Help! Sorry for being mean and greedy.
Rain keeps rolling just around the bend. When the people start singing, it's the mean man's end. Mean, greedy men don't care how we cry. Mean, greedy men don't care how we die. They got more than they need, but they'll bleed us all.